want to go, but that's the direction certain people ended up actually going. So if someone describes you as cynical, obviously we mean that in a way differently today than it was used in the ancient world, but there are some of the ideas of the cynics. Now, when we, just briefly, once again, if you weren't here, is it true that there were early church fathers who were more influenced by Greek philosophy than they were by the Bible? Yes. Clement of Alexandria, great example. Justin Martyr is, coming from a very, he never took off the pallium, the cloak of the philosopher, even as a Christian. And it's easy for us to go, because, we've got 2,000 years of church history and many advantages. We have a completed canon, which you have to remember, starting in the middle of the 2nd century, there started being disputes over that. At first, it wasn't considered a big issue. But then as the collections of the New Testament started circulating, then questions came up, and we'll address those questions when we talk about canon issues a little bit later on. But some of these folks had a limited canon, so they didn't even have all of the New Testament. Remember, who were the two relatively early church fathers that could actually read both the original languages? Origen and Jerome. Remember, you are supposed to. And when was the Council of Nicaea? Thank you very much. Okay, good. We're gonna make sure to. Everyone's got these down. And Origen, Jerome is another one of those things you need to have memorized. And so, especially, if you think about it, if you only have a portion of the New Testament, and you have a rather low view of the Old Testament as needing to be interpreted only allegorically, and there's already become a strong antipathy that has developed between your community and the Jewish community. So you can't learn from them. You can't. There's persecution going both directions. You put that together, and how many of us would have a really good balanced theology if we were in the same situation some of these people were? It's people are a little bit surprised that I attempt to extend as much grace as I do to those in the past who came to what would obviously be to us wrong conclusions. Well, it's because I've taught enough church history to know that you need to look at where they were, and I know that I hope if the Lord tarries till after my death, I know that I would like to be treated fairly. I don't expect to be, but it would be nice, at least for some people, to treat what I wrote, what I did, fairly, look at the context in which I lived, so on and so forth. And so if I'm going to hope for that for myself, then I need to extend that to others as well. And so we can learn, I think, from when we look at those who were in error on important issues and ask ourselves the questions, if we had what they had, how much better would we have done? Or if you want to put it another way, isn't it amazing, given how little they had, how well they did in these other areas? These are some of the things to keep in mind. It's hopefully, at least by the end of this study, the one thing that will not be something you will do just in a knee-jerk reaction is to look at anybody in history and just automatically transport them into our day as if they had access to the same information we have and stood upon the backs of the same giants that we stand upon, and then judge them as if they are a contemporary of us today. You need to recognize where they were, and sometimes that's really difficult, and you'll see lots and lots of books that just don't even bother to try to do that. Now, when we come to the body of literature that has been left to us by early Christians, there are a couple things we have to keep in mind. man, if this thing starts itching, I am going to be in a world of hurt. That's all I can say. I think I will have to be tied down and sedated for a few days because that would get really ugly. Once again, when we talk about literature, when we talk about written sources, even especially for some of you who are younger, some of you who are more of the millennial age, can't do that because we're recording on this. You have seen a revolution in information technology in your life. My daughter can hardly remember a time before she had a cell phone. It's just been a natural extension of her life. And I only pick on her because Josh is older, so I'm trying to go as young as I can. They've grown up with microwaves and cable TV and the internet and things like that. Most of us, my age, I remember my first pager. I thought that was just a technological breakthrough. I felt like a doctor, really important person the first time I got a pager. And then you start getting text on your pager. That was an amazing thing. And when you first got the pager, all you could do if you got a page, you're driving down the road, is pull over and try to find a phone someplace, to try to call whoever it was that was calling you. And of course, in Christian publishing, the Christian publishers don't know what to do. They still haven't quite figured out what to do with the advent of the Kindle and electronic publication. No longer having to produce as many paper books. What do you charge for an electronic book if you're not charging for the paper and the binding and so on and so forth? And all of that kind of stuff has radically changed. And in fact, it used to be you only get published if you actually had something worth saying. Now anybody, no matter how inane and insane, has the same level of platform almost as anybody else, though maybe not as much money to push it. So with that in mind, it's very easy for us to, a lot of critics of Christianity will engage in an extremely naive historiography. For example, you'll have it said, how do we know Jesus actually even existed? I mean, there's just so little evidence. I mean, there's just nobody talking about Jesus, contemporary with Jesus. Well, how many books do you think we have that were written in Israel